Hello and welcome to another episode of Thick Slices and Deep Cuts. On tonight's episode, AC/DC. So this is going to be one of these Radio Giants episodes. I did Van Halen, did Hard, Def Leppard, Aerosmith, and now we're doing AC/DC. I'm pretty pumped to do this. This is one of my favorite bands pretty much my entire life. Certainly one of my favorite three bands. It was like Van Halen, AC/DC, Def Leppard. I think Angus Young was like my first guitar hero. I feel like, I want to say it was Eddie Van Halen, but I swear it was Angus Young. Just running around, spinning on the floor. He was hopping around and doing all kinds of stuff. And they were just like the perfect mix of like heavy bluesy rock and roll with a little bit of heavy metal. And I just, as a kid, I had everything, and what we're going to talk about tonight is basically what I love about the band, which was basically their first album up through Who Made Who, which isn't a proper album, and I'll rank these, but it doesn't matter, because all of these albums are good to excellent. So the ranking, don't put too much thought into that. But I had all of these but one as a kid on vinyl, and I gave them all away years ago. So everything I show you tonight is on CD, because every time I go to a record store to get a copy, they're all like new press expensive, or they're old press expensive. So, but anyway, just quickly, AC/DC out of Australia. Although everybody's like from Scotland, it seems. Not everybody, but the brothers are from Scotland. One of their singers is from Scotland. I'm not sure if the other guys were born in the UK and then moved to Australia. I'm not sure on all the details, but anyway, there are two eras that I'm going to talk about, basically. Two singers, anyway. And no, I don't have a favorite. I like all of this, whether you've got Bon Scott or Brian Johnson on vocals. So, but anyway, awesome, legendary band. I don't know if you can find a rock and roll band that does it any better. But here we go. We'll just get started. So I'm going to start with the first album, which is kind of tricky because I'm doing the international releases. And obviously in Australia, they had like 3 albums done and to our 2, but really they had 3 and we only had 1 for a while. I'll get into that too. But anyway, so I'm going to go with their first proper album from released here in '76. But recorded in '75 and partially in '74. We're going with High Voltage here. Really strong debut. I mean, you can see the production's a little rough, but I mean, it's AC/DC. They kind of have they're pretty close to their sound already here with Bon Scott on vocals, Angus Young, Malcolm Young on guitars. Not sure who's playing the bass on some of these tracks and the drums on some of these tracks, but ultimately you settle in with Mark Evans on bass and Phil Rudd on drums. But there were some other people doing some bass and drums on a few of these tracks. But It's a Long Way to the Top, Warner Rock and Roll is classic. I saw that at the end of the movie School of Rock during the credits. It's even got bagpipes. Again, the tie to Scotland. Rock and roll singer, The Jack. It's one of these bluesy, slow 3/4 ones that they do sometimes. But man, I love that song. Classic. Five Wire's alright. TNT's good. It's like a precursor to the title track of the next album. But TNT's great. Can I Sit Next to You, Girl? Little Lover, She's Got Balls, and the actual track High Voltage were recorded for their original album in Australia that was recorded in '74 called High Voltage. So Little Lover and She's Got Balls are on that original album, which is a little rough. But these songs are possibly the best from that bunch. And High Voltage may not have been recorded then, but it was still recorded with a different drummer and bass player. So even if it was for this session, it sounds like it might have been the first thing they did for this session before they made some lineup changes. But still, a really good, strong debut. And it's basically comprised of this album they did in '75 called TNT. And then they took a couple of tracks from the original High Voltage. They put them together to make this release here. And by the way, I'm ranking apparently 9 studio albums. And so I'm going to put this at 8, but it doesn't mean it's not significant in their career, and it doesn't mean I don't like it. I do dig this album. So High Voltage. They don't quite have their logo yet, but they have their mascot, and that's Angus wearing the school uniform there. People hated this. They just thought it was just like tasteless and crude, and I think AC/DC was like, yeah, that's exactly what we're going for. Thanks for the compliment. Anyway, so there you go. Coming at number 8, their debut from 76, although it was recorded in 74 and 75, High Voltage. Okay, moving on to 76, again, with an album recorded possibly in 76, certainly late 75, but we've got Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. I'm not sure what to make of that album cover. Certainly don't know what to think of that logo there. That's not my favorite logo. So this comes out in 76 as their second album, but it doesn't come out around the world until 81. So nobody even knew about this. You know, pre-internet, it's the 70s. In the States, you didn't know that this album existed in 76, potentially. But, you know, the title track, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, is pretty good. Love at First Feel, probably my favorite track on here, but it's a pretty obscure, deep cut. Big Balls, I liked when I was like 10 years old. Now it's ridiculous, but whatever. It's stupid. It's tasteless. But AC/DC are great at being tasteless. Rocker was a song left over from TNT, I think. Maybe High Voltage. I think it was TNT. So that wasn't even from this recording session. Kind of like this was songs from different recording sessions a little bit. Same thing here. Problem Child's great. But by the time this came out in 81, we already knew that song from another album, which I'll get to. And then you know, Ride On. I knew that first through a compilation. Squealers, okay, Ain't No Fun Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire, and There's Gonna Be Some Rockin'. These are okay, but this is gonna be my 9th of 9, just mainly because the second half for me isn't super memorable, and then there's one track on here that's strong, but it's on another album, and so this will be number 9, but I do like it. It's just the one I reach for the least. And I know this came out in 84, but 74 Jailbreak, and I'll take it out of here so just to avoid the glare, but 74 Jailbreak includes the song Jailbreak from 76, which was originally on this album, and they took it off of here. That would have made this album a heck of a lot better. And then the final 4 tracks, what? You Ain't Got No Hold On, You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, Show Business, Soul Stripper, and a cover of Baby Please Don't Go. Those 4 tracks were from the original Australian High Voltage, the earliest things. Those were from 74. So you get a lot of TNT here and a little bit of the original High Voltage from Australia. But you're missing a lot of tracks from the original High Voltage, but most of them appear on 74 Jailbreak, along with Jailbreak from the Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap session. So, whereas in Australia you got High Voltage, TNT, and Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, in the States you get High Voltage, our version, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, our version, and then later on you kind of fill in the gaps here. But there's still a few tracks missing from this early era, which I'll get to in a little bit. But not going to rank 74 Jailbreak, it's just an EP. So that kind of closes out the really early era of the band, but not yet. And these are all produced by George Young, their oldest brother, and Harry Vanda. So they're doing all these recordings with them. And you're moving on to 77, and Let There Be Rock is a real step up. I mean, it's still kind of in the vein of this stuff, but it just seems heavier. Like heavier, meaner, everything on here is heavy. Every song on here is heavy. Their songwriting's getting more memorable. Dog Eat Dog. Let There Be Rock's this big kind of not theatrical, but it's just this big production. Bad Boy Boogie. Problem Child is awesome, and I like it fits on here better than it does on Dirty Deeds, but for some reason, when they re-release this, they have Problem Child on here. Same version is on here for the most part. Overdose, Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, and Whole Lotta Rosie. We may hear that in a little bit. But this album may be crude, but it's just heavier. And it's just they continue to get better right here. It's the same production team, but now you're on, I don't know, Atlantic or Atco or whatever the label was. So now the world is knowing about AC/DC at this point. I think this is a huge step up. I've got this as my number 6. But again, this is classic. In fact, my top 6, I would just, for anyone who doesn't know AC/DC, but if you didn't know where to start, I'd say start with any of my top 6. There. And really start with any of these. But there you go. their first. I mean, these are all classics to me, but man, this album really steps it up. I like everything on here. So their third-ish album from '77, third internationally from '77. I've got "Let There Be Rock" coming in at number 6, and we're listening to Down Payment Blues, and we heard Riff Raff from their fourth proper release, Power Age from '78. So Mark Evans is out of the band at this point, and Cliff Williams is in on bass. And I don't think there was a problem with Mark Evans. They just wanted better backing vocals. I guess Cliff was more of a veteran. And from what I read, Mark Evans was too nice of a guy. And these guys are a little rough around the edges, especially Malcolm, maybe Angus. I've heard Bon Scott's actually a pretty nice guy, but he seems a little crazy too. Phil Rudd tried to hire a hitman to kill somebody, went to jail, got out of jail, they got him back in the band. AC/DC. Yeah, another good one. What's Next to the Moon? So, Power Age. Still that same production team of Vanda and Young, but man, Down Payment Blues, Give Me a Bullet to Bite On, Riff Raff, Sin City, What's Next to the Moon, Gone Shooting, Up to My Neck and You, Kicked in the Teeth, and I guess the mild hit, Rock and Roll Damnation. You know, you're like, wow, he must hate the Bon Scott era. He ranked the first one 8, the second one 9, the third one 6. Well, this is my number 1. It's my favorite AC/DC album. It's still totally in this style, in this vein of the early stuff. Same production team, it's totally in the vein of, you know, but the songwriting's better here, it's more memorable. They're adding styles. Angus's solos and his riff chords he's coming up with, he's introducing a lot of cool new stuff like this song. So this kind of closes out what I call that early style as my number 1. So where they were kind of getting there with these albums, a lot of stuff sounded kind of similar, but here it just all comes together. So my number 1 is Power Age. And we're not ranking the live album, but if you want blood, you got it. Angus died by getting stabbed by his guitar. This live album is one of the classic live albums. This is their heaviest album right here. Like, I don't know, you know, what constitutes heavy, but like sonically, it's just in-your-face aggressive. I love Bon in the live environment. It opens with Riff Raff. By the way, this performance was in Glasgow, Scotland on April 30th of '78. This came out on like May 5th or May 6th. So literally, this performance was a week before Power Age came out. So they're playing Power Age songs to people that may or may not, unless there was an advanced single. You got Riff Raff, Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, Bad Boy Boogie, The Jack, classic. This version of The Jack is the best. The way that Bon Scott interacts with the crowd is awesome. Problem Child is great on here. Whole Lot of Rosie, this version. In fact, basically, if the song is on here, this version is probably the superior version. Rock and Roll Damnation. High Voltage is definitely better than the original version. Let There Be Rock. It finishes with Rocker, another early song. So this is a classic album. You know, this is my favorite of the Bon Scott era. Just Power Age and then them playing all those songs live, really heavy with just a hungry band right here. I love this Bon Scott era right here. This little '78 era with Cliff Burton. When Cliff Williams joins the band on bass, they're just hungry and they're firing on all cylinders right here. But I'm not ranking it, but if I did, it would be in my top like 4 for sure, maybe higher. I think it's their heaviest thing. All right, moving on. So what we got? Depending on what country you live in, they're releasing stuff, you know. Recording in '74, things are coming out all over 1975, 76, 77, 78, 79. Boom, Highway to Hell. Here we go. The final album with Bon Scott. The first one where Mutt Lange comes in and produces. You know, he's known for doing fancy productions for Def Leppard, but he really, here's Whole Lot of Rosie from If You Want Blood, You Got It. I love this version with the crowd in Glasgow. You can tell that Mutt Lange had an influence. He's got them tightening these songs up. So these songs don't go on as long as maybe they did on Power Age or Let There Be Rock. So their songwriting is getting tightened up in the studio. And he's having Bon Scott give basically his best, most professional performance. Everybody gives their most professional performance to date here. And this is my number 5. This album is a classic. I'm not ranking it 5 because I don't like it. You'll see how this goes. But, you know, Girls Got Rhythm, Touch Too Much, Shot Down in Flames, If You Want Blood, You Got It, the song. You know, Highway to Hell, the song, I don't probably need to ever hear it again. I've heard it so many times in my life, but that doesn't mean it's not a good song. Walk All Over You's good. Did I say Beating Around the Bush? You know, Night Prowler's the long, slow, and to end it. It's an excellent album. I'm ranking it 5th, but I feel like the top 6 are essential albums to listen to, so the ranking doesn't really matter. But Mutt Lange comes in and really cleans their sound up. It's a professional, well-crafted album. More professional than these, but I just love the raw, heavy nature of these. So this sold a ton more than this. For whatever reason, I gravitate to these, just all these. But this is a great send-off for Bon, who, as we all know, unfortunately died months later into 1980. But that closes out, for what I'm talking about today, that closes out the Bon Scott era. You know, High Voltage, Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap, 74 Jailbreak to fill in the gaps, Let There Be Rock, Power Age, If You Want Blood, You Got It, where they peaked with Bon, and then some would say they peaked here, because a lot of people would say this is their favorite album. It's a great album. So there you go, my final album with Bon Scott in 79, Highway to Hell. Crazy story, when I was a kid, I asked my dad, I showed him the vinyl in the store when I was really young, and I said, can I get this album? Because my dad would buy me albums or whatever. He was vehement, seeing that album cover and that title, he's like, you are not getting that album. That will not be in my house. So for the longest time, I had all these albums I'm talking about on vinyl, except for this, which I had dubbed on a blank cassette from my buddy Paul. So I still knew the album very well, but never owned a physical copy until now. So there you go, Dad. I finally got it. It took many, many decades, but I finally got a physical copy of it. All right. So moving forward, we're leaving the 70s. We're moving into the 80s. Bon Scott has died from too much to drink, and then he, I guess, choked on his vomit, asphyxiated, however that was. He's no longer your singer. What do you do? And on such short notice, I don't know. They only get Brian Johnson from a band called Geordie, who I guess was in Scotland. I know he's from Scotland. And they released this album, Back in Black, in 1980. And by the way, on vinyl, it was such a cooler cover. It wasn't all white. It was like just a little gray outline. This is my number 4. And again, most people would say these are your 1, 2. Certainly they're most successful. And that's probably the knock on these. I've heard them. I hate to say it, but I've heard these 2 albums so many times. So when I listen to AC/DC, these are classics. There's no denying it. I've listened to these albums so many times. This is my Led Zeppelin. Some people get burned out on listening to too much Led Zeppelin. I got burned out listening to too much AC/DC and Van Halen. But what can I say? I remember when I bought it, Back in Black was so catchy to me, I kept picking up the needle on the record and playing it back to back to back to back to back. Hell's Bells is great, but I don't need to hear it again. But it's a great song. Shoot the Thrill's good. Hey honey, what do you do for money? Giving the dog a bone. Let me put my love into you. Classic AC/DC, Back in Black. You know, You Shook Me All Night Long. I don't ever need to hear that song again for sure. But kudos to them for writing a hit. Have a Drink on Me. Shake a Leg might be the one song I can still listen to on here. Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. Classic album. And considering the tragedy that struck after this classic album, Mutt Lange, Driving Home, probably their best production right here. Probably. So it's number 4, but it's an obvious classic. I think it sold like over 25 million copies. It's one of the best-selling albums ever, period. All right, moving on. Snowball, because we're listening to the album that followed in 81. For those about to rock, we salute you. Love this album. This was the first thing I owned. I had the big gold album, and it had the gatefold. And this is the final one that Mutt Lange produced. This was his little 3-album run and some of their most successful albums. This is a little more moody, darker, slower, a little bit of atmosphere, like especially on the title track. I Put the Finger on You was one of my favorites as a kid. It's got that fast up tempo. Let's Get It Up is catchy. Inject the Venom's heavy. I like that one. Snowball. Probably my favorite. Yeah, Snowball, one of my favorite. Evil Walks is great. COD, Care of the Devil. Just Keep on Breaking the Rules. Night of the Long Knives is maybe the only song where maybe the chorus isn't the greatest, but the rest of the song is good. Spellbound is slow, but this is that dark, moody atmosphere that you got on the very first track a little bit, For Those About to Rock, the title track. But Spellbound's one of my favorites, even though it's slow. Like, I know Night Prowler was slow to end this one, but I just think the way they end with Spellbound is... and again, I'm kind of ranking these with new ears. Like, I know all these songs, but I'm hearing some of these songs differently. And so that's why this is my number 3. I know, sacrilege, right? How could you rank For Those About to Rock over these obvious classics? But I don't know, it's just the way I just enjoy these songs a little bit more. You can say these sold more, they're more successful, they were better songwriters here. Hey, all I know is a song like Snowball just hits the spot for me. Spellbound, Inject the Venom, I Put the Finger on You, the title track, Care of the Devil, you know, all that stuff. It's my number 3. And you're like, okay, well, where's your number 2? Well, yeah, where is my number 2? Let's see. Well, Let There Be a Rock was number 6. Highway to Hell was number 5. Back in Black was 4. This was 3. We know Power Rage was my 1. And I know this is contrarian all the way, to borrow a Martin Popoff term, but their third album with Brian Johnson, they go to the same studio in the Bahamas, but they don't bring back Mutt Lange. They want to do it themselves because I think Mutt Lange would make you do a take over and over and over and over again. I think they just wanted to do it themselves. But we're talking about Flick of the Switch in '83 is my number 2. I always liked this album, and I always remember people not liking it, so I just kind of was like, yeah, I like it, but I think it's not that good. And like Malcolm Young said, it wasn't like, it was rushed and all this stuff. I don't care about all the criticism. I just listen to it for what it is. Rising Power, This House is on Fire, Flick of the Switch, Nervous Shakedown, it's got cool chords, Landslides Fast. This is a technical, riffy. This is their other heaviest album. I mean, I think Power Age and, you know, the live If You Want Blood You Got It is probably the heaviest, but I think this is their heaviest. Guns for Hire, Deep in the Hole, Bedlam in Belgium. Oh, this is Guns for Hire right here. Bedlam in Belgium, Badlands and Brain Shake. People don't know about songs like Brain Shake. That song's great. Landslide's great, Guns for Hire, Bedlam in Belgium. You know, Nervous Shakedown, This House is on Fire. I love this album. The crazy thing is, this album was the last one they did with that early era that they totally perfected with the different production team before Mutt Lange took over and made them superstars. And then they didn't use him and they came out with this, and I just love some sort of a raw AC/DC quality, not with Mutt Lange, but like right around that time. And I do love these Mutt Lange albums. But this is my 2. Crazy. I like it. I love it. And in fact, on this playlist, in case you haven't noticed, I played the 3 songs to start were all from Power Age. Then I played Whole Lotta Rosie from If You Want Blood, You Got It. I played 1 song from For Those About to Rock, and I'm finishing this show out with all Flick of the Switch, because those are my 4 favorite albums. So you've got this great early era. You could even break this off and just go, they stepped up here big time. And this is the early days, with 74 Jailbreak. The early days, then the next step, but this is all kind of part of that. And then they had the 3 with Mutt Lange, but they also had the 3, the black, the gold, and the white with Brian Johnson when he joined the band. I love the early Brian Johnson stuff. Okay, enough about that. Moving on. So Phil Rudd left the band here. So when you see any videos from this album, Simon Wright is on drums. However, Phil Rudd's drums are on this album. And I love Phil Rudd's drumming for this band. Say what you want about how simple they are, but they bring in Simon Wright, who's like this accomplished drummer, but he doesn't fit AC/DC as well as Phil Rudd does. And that's why they needed Phil. That's why when he got out of prison for hiring the hitman, once he was out of jail, they were like, get back in the band. So you move to 85, and this is, even though this is my number 7 album, I would say it's the least essential. I'm ranking it ahead of, High Voltage and Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, but these are more significant than this. They're more essential than this. This is the first album that I believe is not essential. Here's Bedlam Indulgent. Cliff Williams on the bass, just riding those root notes, like Michael Anthony of Van Halen. That's what I grew up on. So simple, but it's so effective. By the way, when Cliff Williams joined the band, they got better too. But anyway, so Fly on the Wall is my number 7. I liked it as a kid. In listening to it again, I still like it, but there are some songs on here that you're just like skipping. And this is 85. They got a song called Sink the Pink, which I do like. But that title just reminds me that this is like their hair metal album. It's 85. The production, they got Simon Wright on drums. His drums don't sound good, like the way they produced them or the way they recorded them with whatever the big 80s drum sound they were going for. And they did something with Brian Johnson's vocals with like some gated reverb. It's hard to understand what he's saying. So the production annoys the crap out of me on this one. But the title track's okay. Shake Your Foundations, I-E-I-E-O, it's okay. First Blood's a underrated good track. Danger, Don't Talk to Strangers, that's a terrible song. Sink the Pink's good. Playing with Girls is just cheesy. It's like that glammy hair metal era of them. Stand Up's okay. Hell or High Water's good. Back in Business, Sent for the Man's okay. But it's got, like First Blood, Sink the Pink, Hell or High Water. The title track's alright. Shake Your Foundations is alright. It's got good stuff on it. It's got some junk on it too, and the production is the part that takes me off, and I don't like that Phil Rudd's not on this. But I still like this. It is not essential. If somebody wants to start listening to AC/DC, I would not recommend starting with Fly on the Wall. It still sounds like them, but the production doesn't sound like the previous ones. But it's my 7th of these 9. And then this was like basically a compilation, but it had some new stuff. Who Made Who in 86 was a soundtrack for a Stephen King movie, or a Stephen King story called Maximum Overdrive. I guess Stephen King was such a big fan of the band, he basically convinced them to provide the soundtrack and convinced them that he was a fan by singing some song from Dirty Deeds, I forget what it was. But the song Who Made Who, as a kid I thought it was pretty cool with a little finger tapping part. A couple of short instrumentals, DT and Chase the Ace, but the rest of it is You Shook Me All Night Long, Sink the Pink, Ride On from Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, the only one with Bon Scott on there, Hell's Bells, Shake Your Foundation, and For Those About the Rockies. So, this was as far as I went with AC/DC, sort of. Then you get to 88, and my musical tastes are starting to kind of change a little bit, getting a little heavier, and they come out with Blow Up Your Video. And my buddy got it because I always had it on blank tape, but it never clicked with me. It didn't sound memorable. It sounded lesser than all this stuff, because it probably is. It still sounds like AC/DC, but I think there was a song called Go Zone, which is okay, but Heat Cigarette just didn't have much on it. So I never bought that. I see it all the time in the used record stores for cheap, and I still won't buy it. And then at that time I got into Iron Maiden, and Metallica was off to the heavy extreme races. And then in 1990, I was totally off into heavy land. But they put out the Razor's Edge with, Thunderstruck and Money Talks, and I thought it was cool. Kind of like Aerosmith. I'm glad they're doing well. I'm not really keeping up with them anymore, but I'm glad they're doing successfully, and it still sounds like them. So, and I couldn't tell you what they've released since then. I think they just did Power Up, and they got Black Ice and Ball Breaker, Stiff Upper Lip. I'm sure I'm forgetting something in there, but I just can't keep. I don't know what they've been doing ever since. I kind of stopped after Who Made Who. I kind of was paying attention to Blow Up Your Video, totally aware of the Razor's Edge, and then after that, I just kind of stick to this stuff, that early 76 to 86, or the beginning to 86. But I might get if I can find it for fairly inexpensively, a box set they did called Backtracks, which has all those tracks from the Bon Scott days that never made it on the albums. There's even Cold Hearted Man from Power Age, Crab City in Blue from Let There Be Rock, and a few from those early 74, 75 albums right in there. So, and then I think they even have a couple from the Brian Johnson era as well. Oh, and on If You Want Blood, You Got It, the live album, they did Dog Eat Dog during that concert, and it was the one song they had to cut because it was already 50 minutes long with the 10 songs they kept, and they were like, we can't go beyond 50 minutes on vinyl, so we got to cut something. So they cut Dog Eat Dog, which sucks, but it's on that box set, and along with Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap and some stuff from Highway to Hell live with Bond. So I think, if anything else, just to get those final tracks that just never made it onto any of the albums internationally, and for some of those live tracks with Bond that you can't find anywhere else. What else? So I think that covers it. You know, High Voltage coming in at 9, Dirty Deeds coming in at 8, 74 Jailbreak, Let There Be Rock at 6, Power Age at number 1, and If You Want Blood, You Got It, the live album, Highway to Hell classics, Back in Black classics. For those about to rock, we salute you. What did I say? This was 5. Back in Black was 4. Whatever. For those about to rock, it's 3. Look at the Switch. Surprisingly, is number 2. Fly on the Wall, number 7. And Who Made Who? Just a compilation with a few new things, which is like a soundtrack. But my playlist just consisted of my top 4. All these, you know, you're a good band when you can't even get Let There Be Rock, Highway to Hell, and Back in Black in your top list here. But anyway, so this was fun doing this. Big fan of AC/DC. So I think that will cover just about everything. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.